we could place a wager on this, Nick.
Mm.
If the Lions do ever win a Super Bowl,
Yes.
it will be the biggest parade in North American sports history.
Really? You think so?
I guarantee it. Hello and welcome to the Caddie Tales podcast. I am Mark the Caddie, joined as always by my sidekick, colleague, friend, fellow looper Nick. We are excited to talk to you about how this beautiful game of golf that we get to be a part of mirrors the game we call life so beautifully, so often. And especially this week as we get into the NFL playoffs, we're going to talk about that a little bit today, about how from many of the teams, there's something that we can glean about our golf game, probably about life. And so we'll have these worlds collide. You know, sports is got a lot of stuff that kind of crosses genders and individual sports and all that kind of stuff, where a lot of the lessons are the same. So I'm kind of looking forward to that. It'll be kind of fun. But before we get into that, how you doing this fine day, Nick?
Doing good, buddy. Just watched a little TGL golf a couple nights ago and got that kick started, and yeah, it was pretty cool. Did you watch that at all?
Just a little bit. I like many wonder where it'll go. I mean, but
yeah.
Certainly, I will say I was not really paying attention that the whole thing was coming. Like, I wasn't anticipating it or anything like that. But then Twitter was just on fire the other night for TGL, and people were very interested in checking it out. So that was kind of fun. It was a nice active night for golf Twitter. I think that many people enjoyed it more than they thought they would.
Yeah.
And yet they wondered what's the lasting staying power of it. Certainly technology is out of this world. If I had a big investor, I thought, well, okay, let's open one of these places here and you know, make some magic. I mean, I think if you'd be on the front end of it, I know there's golf simulators, but this was different than that.
Yeah, that's quite the setup they have there. It's incredible.
Yeah. And so, you know, like get someplace, you know, big warehouse or something like that and lease it out and get that going. I don't even know what it would cost, but I'm pretty sure it would be successful.
Yeah, I would think so. Yeah, I mean, it's did you see like the way the green's set up, like the way they can contour the green and stuff like that? It's incredible. Yeah.
No, so that's pretty cool. And you know, the one thing that I'm interested in that it kind of goes even deeper than TGL, but golf itself, and I saw somebody write about this yesterday. As there becomes more things that are like entertainment focused, you've got YouTube influencers, Instagram influencers and stuff. You see some golf television ratings declining, but you see these other things really increasing. Yeah. And I don't know how I feel about it. Like, I don't care. I want people like the Bryan brothers to be successful. I think Bryson DeChambeau and how he's kind of in both worlds is good. I just am concerned in general for tournament golf.
Yeah.
I don't want to see the interest wane in that. And people only have so much bandwidth for how much they're going to consume. And I think younger generation, how big are the snippets that they're willing to consume? It seems like they watch things on YouTube and highlights more than they watch full games, except for maybe the NFL. And so there's some really interesting things to track here. And I'll be interested to see how things play out. But hopefully we're also at the start of a professional golf season that is exciting. I know that the Century happened, and there's a lot of hubbub about the scores. You know, I think, what was it, minus 35 or minus 36, wasn't it?
They were going pretty low, yeah. I didn't see what the final score was, but I saw there were some pretty good scores. My
attitude is you've got people who are just so ridiculously good. And I always think about it like this way. The good golfers we caddy for aren't shooting anywhere near that.
No.
You know, I mean, like the people who were like, oh my gosh, you're really good.
Yeah.
They're you know, even par maybe, but they're not 36 under over 4 days. And so you take the really good golfers, the people were like, oh man, I had an awesome player. I had a stick, as we call them. I had a stick today. And those are rare.
Yeah.
But then you take it and you say, okay, but we've got this group of people, Scotty Scheffler and Bryson and all these guys who would make these guys look silly if they played them. It blows me away how good they are.
Yeah. I mean, when I explain to people that Jason Day shot 19 under at our course, they're just like baffled. They just can't fathom it,
Yeah, and then they're always like, but there wasn't any wind, was there? Well, you're right. That's why you're not shooting 19 over, is that it's windy or under. Yeah. Okay, so I think it'd be great to have. I've been seeing some Masters countdowns. I think we're right around under 90 days now to that, and that's kind of an exciting time for golf fans as we get the major season kicked off. So lots of good stuff. But before we really get too much into golf season, we've got the culmination of football season. And I was thinking about it, especially just as it relates to my Detroit Lions.
Yeah.
How there are some things that, like, if you pay attention to them, you can glean and say, okay, this is going to make me a better golfer. But also there's just some skills or some mindsets that would be good for people who want to just be high functioning individuals in any area of their life. I think a lot of times athletes are not necessarily role models to emulate, and yet there are a lot of things I'm seeing in amongst like NFL coaches or NFL teams and players where I'm like, get a little bit of that in my life. And so I thought it'd be fun to kind of talk about that. I want to start with, we're not going to hit every playoff team, that would take forever. But I do want to get started with our teams, okay? Because I think there's actually really valuable things that we can take from each one. And let's start with the Lions, since they're the number one seed, okay?
They made the playoffs. Okay.
Yeah, wow. Yeah. You're one of those condescending Green Bay fans, by the way, who's acting like it's annoying that Lions fans are excited, or you're trying to diminish our success because you feel bad about the way your season ended. It's very unbecoming.
You think so?
Yeah.
Okay. Gotcha.
Yeah. You should be like, they showed us a lot. And the first thing I think is, over the course of the year, they had 22 players on injured reserve. Right now, they still have very key players out. Literally, their best defensive player has been out since week 5. And to quantify how much he meant, he played 5 games and he still had more sacks than guys who are like major Pro Bowl $100 million contract players. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I thought I heard he still leads the team in sacks. So
he did lead the team in sacks, but he had more than Max Crosby, who's a big name, Joey Bosa. He was a pretty legit elite top of the line guy, and we lost him in week 5. But here's the thing that I think is what golfers need to bring into their life, and I don't see this enough from our golfers. The coaching staff for the Lions, and then this trickled down to the players, kept laser focus on their mission, on their goal, and they just really kind of said, we're not going to let outside forces, we're not going to let our circumstances dictate our mood, dictate our attitude, dictate our goals. We are going to just keep going full steam ahead, and we'll see how it plays out. And too often, don't you find that one of the biggest challenges for our golfers, Nick, is a little something goes wrong?
Yeah.
And it just completely throws them into a tizzy?
Yeah, it's like the they kind of just all add up, all the mistakes and everything, and they let it get in their head. Whereas like maybe just like taking a drop and taking your medicine and all that stuff, kind of, it seems like that's kind of what the Lions did, I guess. They just kept moving forward.
Yeah, and also just shift the expectation that during a round of golf, bad things are going to happen.
Yeah, right.
Because it's like the shock and awe that you still see some people have when they don't hit a good shot is fascinating to me. Like, did you really expect that every one of these things was going to be flush and down the middle and perfect? And so, an NFL team, for instance, now I've noticed you see the narrative as they talk about coaches is it's not, are we going to have injuries? It's when. It's who. It's like, it's an inevitable thing. Bad things are going to happen during the course of a season. It's too violent of a game for it not to. And so then the issue is, how are we built to handle it? The Lions, I know, for instance, their general manager has stressed over the last number of years building depth so that if you do lose somebody to injury, you've got somebody who can step up and it not be this major, major void. Okay. There's obviously a limit to that when you lose 22 players, but I see players on the golf course so often. Let's say they hit a ball and it's pretty good even. And it rolls into a bunker. You know, we have over 1,000 bunkers on our golf course. You're going to get into some bunkers on good shots.
Yeah.
There are some shots on our course that are good that are not rewarded.
Yeah.
And the rage from people, the being baffled by it, not only is it not that much fun, what it does is it affects the next shot. And then it affects as they walk to the next hole and they're grumbling. And so now all of a sudden, instead of keeping their eyes on the prize and their goals, they're focused on the negative. And I just think it has a huge impact on them.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, so many times I've told someone, that was a good shot with a bad result. And, unfortunately, you don't always get rewarded for good shots, but you don't always get punished for bad shots either.
Yeah, right. Right. How many times have you seen somebody skull one and it like hits the flag stick or something? And it's interesting because we get greedy because guys are usually not as happy and thankful about that as they are upset about a ball dribbling into a bunker, and I find it to be something that if they could work on that, they'd see improvements to their game. I'd also say about the Lions, and this is something that I believe so strongly. And you have to understand, Nick, I'm not just speaking as a homer. I've lived in Chicago. I've lived in St. Louis. I've lived in, a little bit outside of Milwaukee here. And I grew up in the Detroit area. I fully respect the Green Bay Packers sports fan. I think it's unique. Okay. I think I will say the Packers, I almost think you can't compare Packer fans to the rest of the NFL. I think it's a unique setup. Okay.
Yeah.
I maintain that when the Lions won a playoff game last year, there is nowhere that it meant what it meant to the people there. It's not even close. It is not what that fan base has been through is unlike what I'm telling you, people say, oh, I'm a Jets fan. Oh, I'm a Browns fan. The Jets have won a Super Bowl. The Browns were to AFC championship games. I don't think the Browns or Jets fans should be happy, or we'll get Giants fans. They're notorious for this. Patriots fans are already complaining on the course. Cowboys fans complain. I'm like, dude, I'm 49, and up until last year, we had won one playoff game. So what I think, though, is that there's hope, don't give up. Keep fighting. Do what you got to do to, make the necessary improvements. And when you do, oh my gosh, it just makes it that much sweeter. We could place a wager on this, Nick. If the Lions do ever win a Super Bowl.
Yes.
It will be the biggest parade in North American sports history.
Really? You think so?
I guarantee it.
Really? Will you be there?
Me and my wife, we are going to, if they make the Super Bowl, we're going to Michigan.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. we are. We're both actually preemptively asking off for work around it and stuff like that. Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
But no, their schools will all close. Absolutely, it'll be unlike anything you've ever seen. So I know not everybody's a Lions fan. I know that some people aren't as into football as they are into golf, but the lessons are there. And also Dan Campbell is a great lesson in be steady. Be steady. As I learn attractive features in people, like people I want to emulate, because I wasn't this back in my former life. I like people who are steady. They don't get too high, too low. Those people, I think, tend to be extremely successful and worth following.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would agree. I mean, Campbell's some of Campbell's like fourth down decisions can be a little hit or miss, and he could probably use a caddy telling him, hey, let's kick this one, bud. But,
sure. No, I think that's a valuable thing, is that there are times where he might want to lay up,
Exactly.
But I also think, though, that he said, he explained, I go for it. And he goes, I ask myself, am I going to regret this tonight when I'm laying in bed? What I think he is willing to do is take his medicine, because is there anything more infuriating than a guy who goes for it? Let's say you talk about it. Well, you can hit 9-iron over here, or, take your hybrid or your 3-wood and, you can go for it. And they decide to go for it.
Yeah.
And they shank it. And then the whole way up, they're like yelling at you about how I knew I should have used my pitching. I knew I should have just laid up. Yeah. I mean, you just want to like drop the bag and come to blows, man.
Yeah. Yeah, completely agree. I know. Yeah. I know the feeling. I hate that so much. They're like muffling under their breath, like it's your fault. Like I tried to help, and
yeah. But I think like Dan Campbell's like, I do it. It doesn't work out. It's on me. We move forward.
Yeah, that's a very good point. Yeah, I agree with that.
All right. So, what can your Packers teach us, Nick?
I don't know. Hopefully that last game of the season isn't any indicator of how they perform in the playoffs, because that was pretty ugly. Also, we had a couple injuries late in the season, so that's not great. I don't know. We'll probably maybe win a playoff game and lose in the second round, and that's kind of like the Packers lately, unfortunately.
Yeah. Well, what I think is interesting about the Packers is, all right, so let's say you're with have you ever been with a player who you just don't think, who you think is losing confidence in you as their caddy? Like you can just feel it happening.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Like things start well.
Yeah.
And then,
and then slowly decline. Like maybe like you misread a putt, and then he doesn't ask you the next hole, and you're like, oh no, I've lost him.
Yeah. That's what I think some Packers fans have going on with Matt LaFleur. Is I'm seeing more like questioning, and that's not a good place to be. Whereas like with the Lions, pretty much Dan Campbell speaks, and every middle-aged man in Detroit is ready to just lap it up, and run through a wall and start fighting people, Matt LaFleur. Matt LaFleur, on the other hand, I think it's kind of like the caddy who, things are going well, and overall it's not bad, but there's just a slow decline in confidence happening. And once that happens, it's really hard to get back. I remember I was on a loop, caddied for a guy one day. It was great. He tipped me well. He requested me for the next day. And then we're on the fourth hole on the straights the next day. And for those who haven't played there or can't remember, there's some junk you can get into over to the right. There's some hills and all this stuff. But, a lot of people go there because to the left is, a big lake. And so it's a very scary hole. It's a hard tee shot. And the thing is if you hit too far, though, to the right, depending on what tee box you're on, for the bigger hitters, you can get into that junk. It's one of those ones where you can hit a good shot, but it gets into that junk. Okay. Now, I was a newer kid. I've learned my lessons, and now I'm very explicit with players about that area, but maybe I wasn't that day. I can't fully remember, but also we hadn't set the tone necessarily how much information this guy, it wasn't like he was asking for a detailed grid every hole, but on that particular hole, he hit it and it rolled through the fairway and into the bunkers there on the right side.
Yeah.
It was like we went from being people who, we're going to text and love each other for life to him, I think, hating my guts.
Yeah.
And it really, that has stuck with me, because I'm like, okay, this is a time where you're like, the guy just lost confidence in me. And it's just really hard to get it back. Or, sometimes it happens right off the bat where, you read a putt wrong on the first hole at a guy's, but that's not how it happened for Matt LaFleur. It's like, it's just now this kind of steady decline that I feel I see Packer fans starting to have. I also think Matt LaFleur is the opposite of Dan Campbell And then I think there are some Packer fans who want a caddy for him who will tell him to go for it a little bit more. Like they've gotten too conservative. So like that's a hard thing as a golfer to discern.
Yeah.
When do we get aggressive? When do we hold back?
Yeah, that is something that's nice about Campbell is that he's going to take risks and stuff. And then like LaFleur kind of like takes risks occasionally, and you're kind of like, why did he go for it there? And I think he won his first challenge of the year last week, which isn't great, in week 17. Yeah, 17, 18, I don't know, whatever week we're in. But yeah, it's not good.
No, I think I think that like in golf, it's like you want to know yourself, because I think a lot of these times that people are deciding are impulse decisions. I think most times the right decision for the level of golfer we have is to play it conservative and stuff. But sometimes hey, if you're not that worried about your score, or you have good emotional maturity, go for it every now and then. Make magic happen. Make a memory. Yeah. All right. And I think I'm starting to see some Packer fans who are like, he's too conservative. He's not opening up the playbook enough. We're not going to win like this. And so, I think that as you look at your own golf game, as we have players, it's like, when's the right time to go for it? When's the right time to hold back? Mm-hmm. Sometimes it can be kind of hard to judge. What tournament was it last year where Bryson had no choice but to he was in a bunker and he had to win was it the US Open? Which major did he win last year?
Yeah, the US Open. Yeah, he hit that like 60, 70-yard bunker shot. It was incredible. Yeah.
So, but sometimes you got to go. Sometimes there's no choice. You can't hold back. There's no tomorrow.
Loved it.
And I think that like in the playoffs, you're going to have this sense of urgency, hopefully, for people that might exist on the golf course sometimes. And then there's other times like, you get to hold back. But I do think I when I look at the Packers and I look at how I'm listening to the chatter around town, I have the feel that like LaFleur is that guy who's the caddy who's losing just a little bit of confidence, and people are not really willing, or they're not sure, if I follow this guy, am I going to end up with the round that I want? And that's a hard place to be as a caddy. Now, thankfully, the more experienced we get, I don't think it happens much less often than it did as a first-year caddy, but it also just more often than not, I think we have very satisfied players and very comfortable, good rounds.
Yeah.
But when you have that player who just doesn't think you know what you're talking about, even if you're right and they're wrong, it's very uncomfortable to be there.
Yeah, it's usually a good day to have two bags on your shoulders, because then you can kind of ignore that guy a little bit. But okay, what about maybe a little quicker on some of these? Okay, here's one: the Minnesota Vikings. Okay. Yeah, I know they're a big rival for you, and they came into Detroit, and I think most people picked the Vikings to beat the Lions last week. I would have thought it would have been a little closer game. I mean, you guys look pretty impressive, yes.
Yeah. Now, here's what I think is most important, though. Vikings have had a beautiful year.
Yes. Sam
Darnold's had a good year. You have to be careful to not let one bad shot turn into two bad shots. Yeah. You can't let one bad round turn into two bad rounds. Mm-hmm. I remember Lloyd Carr, the Michigan coach, would talk about, and I think I wrote about this in Caddie Tales, you can't let one loss turn into two losses. It's so easy for that to happen on the golf course.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they got, like you said, they got to put the shot behind them and look forward to the next shot,
Yeah, and have no memory. Like, you got to have no memory. And so what I think is scary is, like, say you're watching Sam Darnold. He had a lot of pressure on him this last week. He was holding the ball too long, throwing balls high. How do you get that out of your head? How does that not dominate your thinking? Because it would be very easy for him to rush things this next game.
Yeah, and it sounds a lot like the golf swing, to be honest. You just kind of got to go back to your fundamentals, I would think, right?
Yeah. And I think that's one thing that, like, professional golfers must have an unbelievable ability to get things out of their memory bank and just move forward.
Yeah. Well, the good ones do, yeah.
Scotty Scheffler, he looks the same after every shot. And I know some people get bored by it, but I think there's got to be a positive to that. I think he's got a lot of fire and a lot of passion, but he's trying to maintain this emotional maturity. And I'd say we're pretty naive or ignorant if we argue with him, because his success level's been pretty high. And so I think the Vikings, they can teach us. It'll be interesting to see how they come out this week. Don't let one round turn into two bad rounds. Don't let one shot turn into two bad shots. The Eagles, all right? The Eagles this is who guys should use when they go to talk to their wife and say, I need a new club. I need a new set of clubs. Yeah. But even just a 3-wood or whatever, because, the Eagles really last year were weird. They finished rough. This year they added Saquon Barkley. Okay, so it's an expensive club. You got to be ready to talk to your wife and be like, "Oh, honey, this is not going to be cheap."
Yeah.
And but he's the example of a guy who comes in and changes a whole team.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they've kind of just ascended the whole year. They've been doing well, and we'll see how they do this week. But you never know.
Yeah, but sometimes you just need to improve the equipment. Yeah. And, look at how good golfers are now because of improved equipment. And so I think this is what you do is you take the stats in, you take the records, and be like, honey, look at how different this is by having Saquon Barkley.
Yeah.
Can you imagine what my scores would be like if I got this new driver? Because it's holding me back, this old equipment, it's just not built for success. I need somebody who is going to be absolutely, or something that's going to be absolutely dialed in, capable of going 2,000 yards, Mm-hmm. And so, Saquon is definitely a perfect example of what upgraded equipment can do for you, how it's just maybe one piece, that one thing missing from your bag.
Is that the argument you used when you got new clubs with your wife? Or?
No. Yeah, right. Because I want to go from a super high handicap to a not as super high handicap.
Quite as high. Yeah.
Along those same lines about what something new can do for you, the Chargers.
Yes.
Look at what a new caddy can do.
Mm-hmm,
a new coach, Jim Harbaugh came. I don't remember what their record was last year, but they weren't a playoff team. Maybe it was 5-13. But this year, I think it was 5-13. And this year, they come and win 11 games or 12, one of the two. And they're a playoff team, 5 seed, and their whole demeanor as a franchise is kind of turned around, because they had some weird things after they moved from San Diego to LA. Didn't really have a fan base and stuff, but they get Jim Harbaugh in, and it's really kind of changed around. And I know some people don't like him, but that's beside the point. He's been successful. He's changed things around. It's not like they completely could overhaul their whole roster. It's a lot of the same players. It's the same quarterback. Yeah. And yet, look at what a new guy can do. So, sometimes just having something fresh. That's one thing that I've wondered, we get a lot of people who have their caddy that they use over and over again.
Mm-hmm.
They'll come year after year. And I have people like that, and I'm thankful for it.
Mm-hmm.
But sometimes you wonder, would a change do well?
Yeah.
Has it run its course?
Yeah.
And but obviously we're looking for different things than the Chargers are and stuff. But, I thought that's the example. You get something new. Here's one, the Houston Texans. And I think this is interesting. Last year, great year. They're still a playoff team. Mm-hmm. But C.J. Stroud was Rookie of the Year, kind of came and set the league on fire, had a great season. Just a little step back, Mm-hmm. And have you ever had a golfer who's like, I don't know what's happening, I played so well the other day?
Yeah, all the time, yes. Yeah, it doesn't translate, it doesn't always translate from round to round, unfortunately, right? You don't always have that same game you had the other day.
Yeah. Sometimes it is just really hard to maintain that consistency level. Mm-hmm. Sometimes you take a step back and you don't even know why. Like, why is CJ Stroud not as good this year as he was last year?
Right.
And so, I see that happen all the time in golf, and we just have to accept that we're going to go through those ebbs and flows. Mm-hmm. And we got to navigate them. Got to fight through them, and then we'll come out the other side, and it'll be okay. I'm sure he'll be fine and be great next year. He wasn't bad. It's not like it goes from great to horrible. There's different degrees of it. But so often you're seeing people who think, okay, I had a really good round today. Yeah, that's going to be the round I have tomorrow. And it just doesn't work that way. And we need to be mentally prepared to deal with that. Now, I will say a contrast, a team that I would mention is the one that I think nobody wants to win the Super Bowl this year, except for the people who live in Kansas City, is the Chiefs. No, okay. The Lions. See, that's you being, you're silly. Everybody who doesn't have a rooting interest in the playoffs wants the Lions or the Bills to win. Okay. Yeah. And so, the Chiefs, I think, are a model of consistency right now. And they're the example, they have a veteran core.
Yeah.
Reminds me of the Cowboys that had that veteran core back in the day.
Yeah.
And it's an example of how doing things over and over and over and over and over again may not be flashy all the time. Mm-hmm. This year, they certainly weren't as flashy. Patrick Mahomes wasn't as, statistically great, but they're still the number one seed.
Yeah, they're like the Kevin Kisner of match play golf. Like, they just keep winning, and you're like, how does this guy just keep winning? Like, it's just like their specialty.
Yeah, their highs may not have been as high this year, but they avoid the low lows because of just preparation and being together a long time and stuff like that. And so, I always think, like, what do we expect as recreational golfers? You got these pro golfers out on the driving range forever. Mm-hmm. Tiger Woods, his putting routine was legendary for practice. Yep. And we hit a few shots and we spend 5 minutes on the practice grade and we expect, similar results. Yeah. It's comical. And, if we really want to improve, it's going to take practice. And if we want to stay, and not so much improved, I mean, there's some natural talent there with people and all that. I guess what I would say, I've told players, I think to get really consistent at this game, you've got to have like no job or family or other goals. And I'm kidding a little bit, but I'm serious in the sense that it takes a lot of work, and a lot of time that a lot of people don't have at certain stages of their life. So, that's one. The Bills, one great club in your bag can go a long way. I think without Josh Allen, they're probably not a playoff team. Yeah. But, and so that's that. Putter. Yeah, have a great putter. A 7-iron. He's built more like a driver, but I think the point, I think the point still is, have that thing that is going to get you out of a jam. That thing you can count on when other things might not be as elite. Go to what you know, and that's kind of the feel I have for him this year. Is like without him, where would they be? Sure. Yeah, probably same, for Lamar Jackson and the rate. I think he has more of a team around him. Yeah.
Derrick Henry's been pretty good.
Yeah, Bo Nix for the Broncos. Jaden Daniels for the Commanders. I think they're an example of add a new piece. Get a new club, learn a new skill, turn your fortunes around. And so, I don't know, it's kind of fun to think about. So obviously you're rooting for the Packers in the playoffs, Nick. Who do you have winning the whole thing?
Hard to bet against the Lions, buddy, but I mean, it's hard for me to pick them. It's hard for me to pick against them, but they'll probably end up winning it.
Wow. Hard for me to pick them. I'm guarding my heart. I'm protecting my heart. I don't want to get my hopes up because it feels like, I don't know, if we had some of our missing pieces, it feels like we have the team. Yeah. But, who knows? I would have thought things were going to fall apart when they were basically wheeling out guys like me to play defense earlier, Yeah. And they kept going. So, but I think that you've got high functioning individuals in one sport there's a lot of things that can translate to this other sport. And so take what you can from successful people. Here's a note about that. We've got something really tragic happening right now in California. And I actually have fatigue from the wildfire images. Like, it reminds me of 9/11, of Hurricane Katrina. And you just have so many images, so much news, that eventually it becomes kind of overwhelming. You feel fatigued by it. And I'm starting to think, as I scroll through Twitter and I see all these images for the wildfires in Malibu, like, that's kind of how I feel. And so what has alarmed me, though, is how happy some people are that this is happening, because a lot of the people who are losing their homes and stuff are very wealthy people. And so it's like, we hate to see successful people have success, because that makes us feel less successful. I'd say we'd all be better off if we go and look at the successful people in life, and we learn from them, and we try to adopt it into our own life, and combine it with our own skills and talents, and we move forward and progress ourselves. So we'll close with heavy baggage, and that's a segment we like to do where we talk about how, here in the winter months, we're not carrying heavy golf bags, but we're looking to lighten the load of some people who are in need. This week I picked up some shifts for some people who couldn't work. That's just maybe trying to be a good coworker with people and stuff. But, I'm looking for ways where, hey, somebody needs some sort of help or blessing in their life, I can provide it for them. I have the flexibility or whatever, rather than just ignoring their text or saying I'm unavailable because I don't want to and stuff. So I was looking for those opportunities recently, and a few have come up. And you know what? Hopefully it makes a big difference in that person's day, so they can go to whatever, a doctor's appointment or their kid's game or whatever. Hopefully on a grander scale, maybe we're looking for some ways to help those people out in California in ways that we can, probably just sending money. But whoever it is around us, try to help lighten their loads, because a lot of people are in the bunkers. They're out of bounds. They're really struggling. And they don't feel a lot of hope right now. But we are here to tell them, no matter how bad it seems, no matter how far gone, no matter how out of bounds, there's always a next shot, and it's full of hope and opportunity. So take yours.